Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to teach you the very bare bone basics that you need in Illustrator so that you can get started designing. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is go ahead and open up Illustrator, and then you want to, let's look at the home page right here. So this is your landing page. If you have any recent documents open like I do, it's going to show you what you recently worked on. Over here are some templates, so if you click on any of these, there's a bunch of templates that they have, so you can go to learn if you want to learn anything new. And there's tutorials that load. By the way, I am on the latest version of Adobe Illustrator. At this point, it's 2019, and I am working from a Mac. But you should be able to use this no matter what version you're using. What I'm going to teach you today is pretty much the same thing, no matter what version you're using. All right, might look slightly different. So let's go ahead and click Create New. Now, you'll notice that you have options here. So let's say you know you're working for something for a mobile phone. You can click on it, and they have the versions of here's the iPhone 8, 7, or 6, and so you could click on that and design for that, or an iPad Pro. If you're doing something for a website, it gives you templates for that. Same thing for print or film and video, or finally art and illustration. For this case, I'm just going to click on anything. It doesn't really matter. Over on the right hand side, you can choose points. There's a variety of options depending on what you're designing for. I'm just going to choose inches for today, and you can choose whether you want it portrait or landscape. Artboards, I will get into that maybe at a different tutorial, but this is where you actually design. You can add more than one artboard. I'm just going to do one artboard for now and go ahead and click Create. Okay, so here in this middle, this white area, think of it like a white piece of paper. If you were getting ready to draw on a plain white piece of paper, that's what this is. This is the artboard. Think of the gray area like a desk. So if you had your plain white piece of paper on a desk, you might assemble some of the stuff you're going to do on the desk, and then you would bring it over and either glue it or draw it down on your piece of paper. That's what we're looking at right here. Okay, so coming over, let's look at some of the basic things. You have properties, layers, libraries. Now there's a lot more to Illustrator than this, but this is your basics. Layers means that you can select a separate work area that you can either keep things together. So like you're drawing a face and you want to keep everything on the head together, but you want to keep, if you're moving on to the other part of the body, maybe you want a separate layer for the body. Properties is whatever tool you're working on, it's going to give you options for that tool. Libraries is where you can store things, maybe brushes that you made, or maybe you're going to store an image or something. You would have the library for that. All right, so let's go over here to the left hand side. This is your selection tool. Anytime you hover over top of a tool, it's going to tell you what it is. I'm going to just do the very, very basics today. On the left-hand side at the bottom, you have a fill, which is your color, the inside color. You have a stroke, which is your outline, and you can choose the color there. Whatever is closest is what's going to be done. So right now it's the fill. If I switch to this, you can see this comes in the forefront. That would be the outline. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to double click it. I'm just going to pick, I don't know, random color, red with a black outline. So this is your tools. These are your shapes right here. So you can right click and you can see that you have a variety of options. I'm just going to choose the rectangle tool for right now. So to get started with the rectangle tool, I'm just going to click and drag. And because I chose a red fill with a black stroke, it's doing the same thing. Now notice that it is highlighted here, and you can see these little squares. Those squares are called anchor points. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's use the selection tool. So if I click on the selection tool and I just click over in this gray area, you can see that I have a black outline and then I have a red fill. If I click on my rectangle and I go to properties, here's my fill, here's my stroke, and here's something called opacity. Now, stroke means your outline, so if I up my points, I can make my outline thicker or thinner. There's also options under stroke. If you wanted a dashed line or you want to change something within the stroke itself, that's where you're going to click on. Opacity means how much you see of it. So for instance, if I click on the opacity here and I lower it, it's how see-through or transparent or opaque something is. Opacity comes from the word opaque. So I lowered it to 37% opacity, which means it looks very transparent at this point. It doesn't look solid. So I'm going to go back to here. To change it, I can just up it right back again. Okay, so let's say that I wanted to change the color of this. I just double click it, and then I can come over here, change a color this way. I could also double click it. Oh, sorry. I double clicked, ignore that. Double click puts you in isolation mode. That's something we'll talk about at a different tutorial. Just click it once. You can change your fill and stroke over here. You can change it in your properties panel, or your color guides come up and you can change it that way. In Illustrator, there's usually at least 5 different ways almost to do anything you want to do. So I'm going to show you a couple more things quickly. I'm going to draw a couple more shapes, rectangles. All right, so now I have a variety of them. Let's say that I wanted to make them all move together. I can take my selection tool, I can click and drag a marquee, it's called a marquee, over top all of them, and I can group them. So there's multiple options for that. In your properties panel, it comes up as group right here. You can right click and choose group, or you can go up here to object group, or the shortcut is Command G. So all those will group it, and what happens is they then move together as one. I was just mentioning isolation mode. What that means is, let's say that you have grouped these together and you want to change this rectangle, but you don't want to ungroup them to change the one rectangle and then have to group them back together again. So if you double click on the group, it takes you into isolation mode. It allows you to select something individually, and you can then pick a different color, change the size, whatever it is that you want to do. And if you hit escape, it takes you out of isolation mode and making a liar out of me at the moment. Take you out of isolation mode, there we go, and everything is still grouped together. Okay, let's say that you want to copy something. So I'm going to actually ungroup this. If you want to copy something, I really love this rectangle, I want to make another one of these rectangles. There's a variety of ways that you can do it, as always. You can go to edit and copy, or you can choose Command C, and then paste would be edit paste with Command V. You can right click, and you have some other options here. It's not going to be for copying, but I'll show you these in a second. Or you can hold down, depending on what you're working on. If you're on a Mac, it's Option, and if you're on a PC, it's Alt. So you just hold down Option and you drag, and then you let go with your mouse, and it makes an exact duplicate of whatever you're working on. Okay. Let me show you a couple more things. What the direct selection tool does. That's this right here. So notice that you have these little squares called anchor points, and a direct selection allows you to select just an anchor point. So you can then alter a shape simply by clicking on the anchor point. You can also do what's called a widget. See these little circles? They're called widgets. I'm sorry, but that's just the most fun word I think Illustrator has, a widget. You can click on it and drag it, and it will curve. Now, there are other options in properties that pop up. You can change your corner size. You can do all kinds of things like that. But this, just to get, again, this is just the bare basics of Illustrator. So now I've showed you the selection tool, I've showed you what the direct selection tool does. Let me go ahead and get rid of this. To get rid of it, you just click on it and hit delete. That's as simple as that. Let's look at the pen tools. I want to show you one more thing before we do the pen tools. If you're going to fill an object with color, you have options. So let's say you don't want an outline. Click on the stroke and click the none, and it gets rid of it. You can do the same thing with a fill. You can click on it and click none. Of course, then you can't see your shape, so you do need to have a color or an outline to see it usually. You have another option as well. It's a gradient. So if you click on gradient, it will turn it to a gradient. Gradients are amazing. You can change it to a radial. You can change it to one of my favorites, which is freeform, which allows you to kind of move your gradient around as to how you want it to look. I'm going to go back to this. You can change your angle so that you have your gradient look a different direction. If you want to change your colors, double click on, these are called stops, double click on your stop, and you can choose a color that you want. You can also go up here and adjust your color this way. And let's say I want to add, let's get crazy with it, I don't know, a yellow. Ooh, that's very nice. Okay, if you want a different color in there, you can do this. If you hover next to your gradient slider, you can see the plus sign comes, and just click and it adds different stops. So let's get even more crazy and let's add a red in there. We're very Rastafarian on this here. So you have green, red, and yellow. And if you want to get rid of any of these colors, maybe I don't like the way the red looks, click on your stop and go ahead and click the delete key, and that will get rid of it. So that's another option for adding color. So let's say that we wanted to create a sky, and we just use our rectangle tool and we draw across. Maybe I don't want to have yellow and green for my sky. Let's go ahead and choose, I'm gonna do like a light blue down here, and I'm gonna choose like a darker blue up here. Oh, that's very nice for my sky. And let's say I wanted to have, I wanted to draw another rectangle for grass, but man, this block keeps getting in the way. Every time I try to draw it, it keeps getting selected. So what I want to do is lock it. I can go to my layers, and if I click down here, let me get this out of the way so you guys can see. This is your visibility icon. It turns everything on and off. And then if you want to lock something, like I want to lock this so I can't select it, you just click over here and it locks it. And that way you can draw on top and it's not able to be selected. So I'm going to click down here and I'm going to create another one. Maybe I want this to be grass, and let me make it, I don't know, darker. Yeah, like a sunsetty feel. Okay, and it doesn't fit my artboard, so I can just click on the selection tool and drag this down so that it fits the entire artboard. And now I have my grass, and now I have my sky, and let's say this is bothering me and I want to lock this too. I can just come over here and hit lock. And again, this tells you, if you turn the visibility icon on and off, it tells you what's what. All right, so now I have a sky, now I have grass. Let's say I wanted to add some clouds and I wanted it to be freeform. That's what the brush tool allows you to do. So I'm going to choose a color. I'm just going to choose a white. Why are we doing clouds at sunset? I don't know. I'm just picking a white. I'm just drawing a random cloud shape. There we go. Now, if you have connected the ends together, you would be able to fill it. So it looks like that. If you draw with a paintbrush and you do not connect the ends, you're not able to use the fill tool because it's not a shape. You can only fill a shape. Otherwise, it's considered a path. So I'm just going to click this and get rid of it. And I'll keep my cloud there for a second. Okay, so those are the very, very basics. Last thing I want to show you before I get off of here is how to use the pen tool. The pen tool is really cool. It works like this. You click, 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 and if you come back to your original anchor point, it makes a shape. This is the Curvature Pen Tool, and it allows you to pop out sides to curve. Look, I just made a really nice cloud. Well, I wouldn't say nice, but a decent cloud right there. You can also use it on its own if you're trying to make a curvy shape. And as long as you connect to your original anchor point, it makes an entire shape. And you can then double click it up again with a double click. I don't know why I keep saying that. You can then click it and choose a different color and fill it and make it whatever you want it to be. Okay, I keep saying last thing and then I think, oh, I should tell you one more thing. The eraser tool. All right, so if you right click over here, you have eraser, you have scissors. There's also a knife tool. It's not appearing at this moment because I can't really use it in this. If you have the eraser tool and you just slide right across with your eraser tool, it will separate shapes. And then if you click off of it with your selection tool, you can take those shapes and delete half or part of it. Scissors is really used to separate a path. So let's say like I drew this and I have all these little anchor points in here. I could go to my eraser tool, choose scissors, and I can click on part of it, and what happens is I just cut that part and separated it out, and that's what the scissors is for. All right, guys, I think that is the very, very basics of Illustrator to help you get started. There is so much more. This program is amazing. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's a lot of fun, but this should help you get started with just the very basics. If you have any questions at all, just leave me a comment or below, and I'll be happy to answer it.